Hi from me, Jared Epstein, and welcome to another episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. At Simcha, we celebrate life of all ages, and today, Bet Shalom welcomes us with open arms as the only assisted living facility for Jewish seniors in Durban. Then, we also learn all about funded high school opportunities for Jewish teens in Israel who come from around the world with Na'aleh Elite Academy. To start off the show, Batya Bricker is back, this time talking about the lives of some of the women in her book, Goodnight Golda, who have taught her many lessons in fearlessness.
Fearlessness can be many things. It can be saving someone from danger or changing society for the better. It can be having the courage to say, imagine if, and dreaming of something that the world needs. But being brave is hard. Often you feel judged. You worry that people will consider you stupid or silly or misinformed. Often you feel really alone. There are many Goodnight Golda women who modeled for us how even if you're alone, even if you feel unsupported, you can still make a huge difference and change the world. One of those is Golda Meir. Golda Meir became the first female Prime Minister of the State of Israel. She was actually 14 when she ran away from home, and she ran away from home because she didn't want to follow the model of what a nice Jewish girl should be, i.e. have children and get married. And although she wanted to do those things, she understood that she had a superpower, and her superpower was words. Even when she was young, she managed to change things, to raise money, to influence people with her words, and she understood that this was her superpower. But undoubtedly, her shining moment was that night in 1948 in front of the Chicago Jewish Federation, where she spoke about the need to raise money for a possible state of Israel. Her words were so powerful that they raised double the amount, $50 million. And it was famously said by Ben-Gurion later that if it was not for Golda Meir, there would not be a Jewish state. Ben-Gurion also joked about how Golda Meir was the only real man in the Israeli cabinet. And she must have felt very alone. She was indeed the only woman. And she famously quipped, she said, "Oh, well, you would never say that. Ben-Gurion was the only man in an all-female cabinet." So she owned the fact that she was alone, and she didn't let it stop her. Another woman who was very much alone, but who managed to change the world, was back here at home, Helen Suzman. Helen Suzman was born to Jewish parents and lived during apartheid in South Africa, with terrible discrimination and bias. She became a parliamentarian, and she was the only woman in an all-male parliament. She was the only voice that spoke in opposition to apartheid, and she was the only first-language English speaker. She must have felt incredibly alone. And yet, she made a friend that was perhaps worth 1,000 friends, because it was Helen Suzman who stood beside Nelson Mandela, her friend, when he signed the Constitution for a new, free and democratic South Africa. Ashaja Araro is a contemporary woman, young lady, who models for us this idea of doing things even if you feel like you're alone. How do you fight a fight of words? How do you fight prejudice? Ashaja Araro has chosen to do that via social media, and she's chosen to fight with words. Ashaja was born in 1991 on the roadside as her family fled Ethiopia on their way to Addis Ababa for airlifting to Israel on Operation Solomon. Her family had to flee Ethiopia because of persecution, and when they arrived in Israel, it was like a dream come true. Ashaja was part of the Beit Israel tribe that we think have been separated from the nation of Israel about 2,000 years ago. And it wasn't until the 19th century when they discovered that there were other Jews in the world. In fact, they were amazed that there were white Jews. So Ashaja Arara grows up in Ethiopia, but in Ethiopia, Jews were considered falasha, the other, and so there was discrimination against them because they were Jewish. When they came to Israel, all their dreams had come true. They came to the land of Jerusalem, and they were finally with their Jewish brethren. But they were now in a country that was majority white, and there was discrimination against those who were black. So Ashaja knows that sometimes she gets criticized for being black, sometimes for being female, sometimes for being Israeli. And she has chosen to use social media to fight those prejudices. Ashaja, like Helen Suzman and Golda Meir before her, understood that it's hard to be an outsider. It's hard to feel alone. But sometimes you have to turn the world upside down and make your own place in it. And that's what Ashaja has done. She has created #Black Jewish Magic. And in that space, she has come into her own.
Bet Shalom is the only Jewish assisted living facility for the community in Durban. Sally Berkowitz takes us on a narrative tour of the home, and we even get the honor of hearing from some of the residents, including a resident who is 100 years young.
Bet Shalom is a jewel in Durban's crown, where everybody that is 60 years and older has a home that they can always come to. So the name Bet Shalom is quite simply, as it reads, Beth Shalom, which means abode of peace or home of peace, which is exactly what the home is all about. Bet Shalom was definitely not immune to the COVID pandemic, and we embarked on an initiative whereby we created a bubble for both our residents and our staff, where we created a system of shifts and rotation with our staff, where they stayed in an off-site facility which was completely isolated from the outside world, and we managed those shifts together with the certain staff that lived within the home as well, to ensure that our facility remained completely COVID-free, which we're proud to say during that period we did. As a result of the bubble, we were fortunate to have the assistance from the wider Durban Jewish community, the SAJBD KZN, where they gave us access to the Durban Jewish Club, and a specific area was refurbished in a manner to accommodate our staff, feed our staff, and allow them to ablutions, etc., to enable the bubble to operate as it did. There are a number of key factors as to why this home is critical to the Durban community. One of those reasons would be that a number of the children of those living here have either semigrated or immigrated, and we at Bet Shalom provide them a home from home to give them that warm, loving feeling that they would typically enjoy with their families.
Some of the residents have their children so far away that being at Bet Shalom is a haven where we are together and we can be without our own family and be as like a Bet Shalom family.
It was the only place for me to be because my children have both immigrated overseas, and when I reached the age of 90, living in a flat on my own, I decided that I must come to a place of care. And I chose Bet Shalom because my husband had lived here and passed away here. And I decided that Bet Shalom was the place for me.
What does a typical day look like in Bet Shalom? Well, naturally with COVID having been thrust upon us, there was no norm, and the residents were extremely resilient in their approach, where they were confined to the home. They weren't able to go on excursions, they weren't able to do what they are used to doing, which was particularly difficult. However, without COVID, it's a different situation where there is daily activities. Residents are able to enjoy the garden, they're able to enjoy activities that we plan for them, whether it's bingo, whether it's arts and crafts, whether it's a visiting singer, sing-alongs. We even have a happy hour every now and again. So those are the activities. That's what makes Beth Shalom a happy place in general. Besides the regular activities that take place, probably the highlight of every day is the food. And like any Jewish home, the food is of a high standard, of high quality, and we try and bring and introduce all the traditional food that we possibly can. In particular, during the Chagim or the festivals, the traditional food is served, whether it's donuts during Hanukkah or the Passover meal, or tea time, dinner time, and we have sponsored bras from time to time, as well as Oneg Shabbat meals. We make sure that what the residents have been used to throughout their life continues here at Beth Shalom.
We do have outings, and we have our own friends that come for tea, and some come to play bridge or other games, and we like to see children, and people bring animals, dogs to visit, which is also very nice.
Jewish family values are very important, and as a result we encourage those that don't have family here to make the effort, especially the youngsters, to come and visit and spend some time with the residents here. It warms their hearts, and it gives them that, it's like a highlight of their day. It gives them a sense of belonging, and it's something that we encourage. The other important aspect that we try and address is that in order for certain prayers to be said in a synagogue or a shul environment, is it requires a minyan, which is a group of 10 men. And we encourage those residents that are here, plus any outsiders, to assist us in meeting that requirement, in particular on the Sabbath, Friday evening, where we do have a service in-house.
Beth Shalom is wonderful. We all love it. We're happy. It's a delight.
Being a traditional Jewish home, the various Chagim or festivals are very important to us, and we, along with the residents, make every effort to make those particular events special. Whether it's Sukkot, where we build our own sukkah and we decorate it, as well as New Year's and our traditional Pesach meal. The founders of Beth Shalom saw the need for this home in the Durban community, but a home like this doesn't operate without substantial funding, and we rely on our benefactors to provide that funding, and it's with gratitude and thanks that we give to those benefactors, whether it's families, whether it's foundations and trusts. Without them, Beth Shalom would simply not exist. This is another example of how charitable and caring the Jewish community, Durban Jewish community as a whole is, where we make sure that we look after everybody, whether throughout the community, everybody in need throughout the community.
Na'aleh Elite Academy in Israel focuses on funding and highlighting high school opportunities for Jewish teens in Israel from around the world. We learn more from their director of the Western World region, Shoshana Becker.
Na'aleh started 30 years ago, and it was an initiative of a few different organizations. It's a partnership between the Israeli government, the Jewish agency, and Na'aleh administration. The idea of Na'aleh originally, 30 years ago, was to provide Jewish education and strengthen their Jewish identity of Jewish teens from the former Soviet Union. It was around the time that the Soviet Union became former Soviet Union, and there was a need for a solution, for an education, a high top-level education option, and staying Jewish, and being true to themselves and to their families. So this became an option 30 years ago. 10 years later, it opened up as an option to the rest of the world, to the Western world, which is the part that I'm in charge of. And the reason the government covers tuition, it's very important to the Jewish Agency and to the Israeli government to provide this option for Jewish teens around the world. And in terms of limitations, numbers and everything, we don't have a limit of number of kids who can come to Nale. If it is right for you, if we find that it is right for you, you will be able to come, and you will come. So Nale Elite Academy is basically a life-changing program for teens, Jewish teens from all around the world. It provides a scholarship, a full scholarship for tuition and other things for 3 or 4 years of high school, where kids come in anywhere between the ages of 13 and a half and 16 and a half, so into what we call 9th grade or 10th grade, and finish their high school years studies in Israel with a full certificate, what we call Bagrut, a full matriculation certificate, which is recognized all around the world. The teens, first of all, they come from 64 countries around the world, so you can imagine how exciting that is. The kids come and meet friends from all around the world, different cultures, different languages, and they become best friends and make really lifelong connections. They live on campus. All the schools that they go to are schools that have both the school itself with the classes and lessons on campus and dorms. So they live in dorms with their friends. And so it's both a very high academic program and also a social experience, good one. What it does is it connects Jewish kids or kids with Jewish ancestry, connects you to Israel, your Jewish roots, which is very important. And each kid comes from a different background, some stronger Jewishly, some less, and they find their own place. Sometimes kids will come from small communities where the Jewish community is dwindling, and the parents want to make sure that the kid has a strong connection to their self, to their own identity, and know how to make a person of their own, like grow and mature. We have a variety of schools that have Nale classes. And we differentiate them by their Jewish level of observance, I guess. All Nale classes have the connection with Israeli students. During the first year, you learn a lot as a class. You learn a lot of Hebrew hours, Ulpan. And the second year and third year, etc., by then your Hebrew is at a high level, and you can mix with Israeli students. The higher your Hebrew level is, the more options are open for you. If I look at all the different schools that we have, and each school is its own individual school, the values or the pillars that true for each one of them are Zionism, connecting the students to Israel, to its society, to the country, connecting the students to the Jewish culture, Jewish history, getting to know Israel. There are a lot of hikes and trips outside of campus all the time. It's something that we do here in Israel. Museums, meeting people, interesting people, and just getting to know the country and its history. And there's so much. The history in Israel is just so rich. And so there's a lot of that, a lot of outdoors. Another pillar is being part of a society and learning to live in a society, to work in a society, to be part of a group. And that's really what dorm life gets you into. They become mature and self-motivated, and they really become much much more mature, I would say, than many other kids who go to high school in their own town. Tikkun Olam and Chesed are things that we all grew up on in the Jewish community. Giving back to society, doing something for the world. And it's the basis of all our schools and Na'aleh Elite Academy in general. Volunteering hours throughout the year for every child. They do all these different things, and it is a must. It is one of the major pillars of not only of Jewish society, it's a Jewish value, basic value, and it's a value in all of our schools and in the program. Doing good for the world and doing good to the world. Na'aleh Elite Academy is relevant to South African teens, I think, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it connects them to their own Jewish identity, to their history, to their family history. No matter where your family is from around the world, the Jewish nation, the Jewish country, Israel and its history is part of who you are. Also, it's a great solution for top-level, not only Jewish education, Israel education, and really connecting to so many other cultures. The kids get to know, you come with your own culture, then you meet a friend from China, from Japan, from Indonesia, from America, from Brazil, from wherever it may be. Suddenly, not only do you learn new cultures, you also understand your own culture much better, and I think it strengthens your own self much more. You suddenly appreciate what you have and what you grew up with even more. And you start sharing your own culture and your own background and history with others, and I think it really strengthens you as an individual. And I think it's just an amazing experience for teenagers who choose to do it. It's a life-changing experience, and it really, really is.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Jared Epstein, and the Simcha team, remember these words from Canadian singer and songwriter Leonard Cohen. Act the way you'd like to be, and soon you'll be the way that you act.